I'd like to say, Ministers, there is no debate in this House about the importance of the retrofitting programme. It's a key step to reducing our emissions in a dramatic and a radical way, and in the dramatic and radical way that we must do. The technical possibility exists for us to have huge cuts in emissions from our home heating. And like the possibility of free public transport, for example, there are huge other benefits to society and ordinary people, not to mention, or not least to mention, the warmer and energy efficient homes that can also reduce respiratory illness and the deaths associated with them. We can improve air quality dramatically, and we can improve good quality, decent paying jobs and apprenticeships for decades to come. And most importantly, we can cut the need to use oil and gas and coal. It can also, I think, help us to change the debate around climate change for once and for all, from where ordinary people are consistently asked, what are you prepared to sacrifice? What are you as an individual prepared to do to change your behaviour, to change your lifestyle, to one where we offer a vision to people for a fossil fuel-free future that is better, healthier, more equitable and a more compassionate place to live than where we are now. So nobody could have a problem with the government's big effort around retrofit programme. And we've known this for the last few years as the crisis is accelerating, and we know that the need to cut fossil fuel use is more and more urgent. The Green Party and the Minister entered this government on the basis that only with the Greens in government could we deliver the radical change that was needed to stop the worsening of the crisis. And yet, I just want to say, what do we see with this retrofitting programme? And practically with every other practical policy, this isn't a huge ambition or a huge step forward. In 2019, the then Minister Richard Bruton, the predecessor, announced in a PR flurry a retrofit plan for 500,000 retrofits of homes with 400,000 heat pumps. So this isn't a dramatic improvement in what has already been announced and is now being regurgitated 3 years later. But moreover, my issue with the structural problems around the scheme remain the same as those echoed by deputies here. If you are not included in the group that qualifies for the Warmer Homes scheme, if you're not on fuel allowance or living in poverty and social welfare, or if you're not in the group that have the capacity to borrow 20 or 30,000 euro, you remain in the same situation that you've always been in. And let's be clear that that is the vast majority of ordinary working people in this state. Most of them will face the same issue of not being able to take the steps they need to reduce their emissions and to improve the efficiency of their homes. And I, like others, have example after example after example of people coming to my clinic who are just a few euro above the threshold to receive fuel allowance or to qualify because they don't fall into the, I think, pretty inadequate category that this government has set for energy poverty. It's not good enough, it needs to be reviewed, and we need to take in a bigger cohort of people who can't afford to borrow but don't fall into the category of being poor enough to be supplied by the state. But there's one other issue I want to deal with before I hand over to my colleague. I received a PQ reply yesterday with issues to do with this scheme. And the much lauded spending of £1 billion a year between now and 2028 turns out to be no such thing. And like the carbon budgets and the targets of reductions on an annual basis, the carbon of reduction emissions, the figures are totally backloaded to a time when neither Eamon Ryan nor the Green Party, nor possibly any other party that are now in government, can be in government or will be in government. We don't know what's going to happen after 2025, but it is not until 2027, 2028, 2029, 2030 that the actual billions start being spent. It is very frugal up to that point. So again, we're backloading the responsibility of reducing emissions, of reaching the targets that are required for us by Paris and by our own climate legislation and by the government's own programme for government. Everything is being backloaded to a period of time when you, Minister, may not be sitting there at all. So who's going to be held accountable and where's the responsibility? The Act may do that, But what we'll be doing here is one government passing on to the next the legacy of backloading of targets. And let's be honest with people, this is not £1 billion a year. This is an average of £1 billion over the next 8 years, and brings it to £8 billion over 8 years. But it is nothing like that between now and 2027.
Deputy Richard Bybar.